What's up, everybody? I'm aware that what I've talked about in the last couple videos may be throwing some people into an existential crisis, so I don't want to leave you hanging. I want to explain a little further. Several people have told me I've never been more wrong about something, and, that's fine. I'm really not trying to lead anybody astray here. This is just the way I feel about things. And I thought on the subject for years before talking about it publicly here. And all I can do is tell you how I think on things and show you the information that makes me think that way. In the years after Jesus, there was no Bible. There was just word of mouth, what people said they saw and witnessed. The Universal Church of Rome got together at Nicaea and decided what was and wasn't true. They said that God the Father of Jesus was Yahweh from the Old Testament. But not everybody thought that it was. There was Marcion and the Gnostics, and they all got declared heretics. So I just want you guys to understand that not everybody thought that they were one and the same. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with images here for entertainment value. This is a study session, and I just want to present what Jesus said and did and what Yahweh said and did so that you guys can look this up, see if it makes sense or not. Let's start off with a little true or false. So, true or false? Jesus commanded that you sacrifice all of your firstborn males unto him for the rest of time so that everybody remembers his awesome power. With a couple of provisions where you can ransom back your son by paying a couple priests. Or how about this one? Jesus put it into the heart of a king to transgress against him so that he could punish a whole nation with his righteous vengeance and unlife 70,000 people. True or false? Jesus said you are to worship him and make the appropriate sacrifices at all times, or he will send curses, confusion, and rebuke in everything you put your hand to. He will plague you with diseases. He will strike you with wasting disease and fever and inflammation, with scorching heat and drought. The sky above will be as bronze and the ground as iron, because he won't let it rain in your country. Jesus will cause you to be defeated before your enemies. Your carcasses will be food for all the birds and the wild animals, and there will be no one to frighten them away. You'll be pledged to marry a woman, but another will take her and, yeah, her. So, true or false? Did Jesus say those things? I'm going to go with no, false. But every Christian preacher out there, and I'm not saying anything bad about anybody, will tell you that that's true. I actually just installed a baptismal for a preacher up the street here a little while back, and he's a great guy, drives an old beat-up truck. He's the exact opposite of Kenneth Copeland. And I guarantee you, he would tell you that Jesus did all of those things, only not realize that he is saying that. If you believe that Jesus is of the Father, one and the same, and that Yahweh of the Old Testament is the same Father that Jesus talks about, then you're saying that Jesus said all of those things, because that's what Yahweh said in the Old Testament. If Yahweh is the Father and Jesus is the Father, then Jesus is Yahweh. The case that everybody tries to reconcile with is by saying, well, that was the old times and things changed. Well, 1,000 years to God is a blink of an eye, and I don't think he changed that much. Malachi 3:6, last book of the Old Testament, which, by the way, some people just use the first 5 books of the Old Testament because they are dealing directly with Yahweh. I, Yahweh, do not change, so you, the descendants of Jacob, are not destroyed. Hebrews 13:8, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. I think by any interpretation of the text, you can see that the acts of God in the Old Testament and New are completely different. What are the miracles that Jesus performed? He healed the sick. He cured the blind. He cast out evil spirits. What are the miracles of Yahweh? He turned a staff into a snake. He turned the rivers into blood. He brought insects and frogs and locusts. And instead of just putting it into Pharaoh's heart to let the Hebrews go, he hardened his heart so that he could punish the whole nation. And then he topped it all off by eliminating every firstborn in Egypt. And when he came to do this, he had all of the Hebrews paint the door with lamb's blood So he knew to spare those households. So the true God that knows the number of hairs on your head needs a sign on the door to know whether you're one of his or not. So I've used this passage in the last couple videos, but there's a lot more like this that we'll get into. But Jesus is speaking to the children of Abraham. It says that just before this, it says, "Ye are of your father the devil, the lusts of your father you will do." When he speaks a lie, he speaks of his own because he's the father of lies. So they go back and forth a little bit. It's kind of an insulting thing to say you're of the devil. And Jesus says, "It's my Father that honors me, of whom you say that he is your God, but you have not known him." So Jesus knows exactly what God they worship, and he said this about it. And I know there are prophecies and this and that. For one thing, the people he was talking to said that he wasn't their Messiah. But let's do a couple other verses. So the Pharisees were constantly trying to trick Jesus and get him to break the laws of Moses. So they bring him an adulteress. And they say, "Okay, big son of God, Moses' law commands that this adulteress be stoned. So are you going to uphold the law?" And he's just sitting here drawing in the sand, doesn't even look up. He just says, "All right, whichever one of you are without sin, cast the first stone." So instead of there being some big angry mob that stones this adulteress, everybody slowly starts walking away. Then Jesus looks up and says, "Oh, has nobody condemned you?" And he says, "Guess what? Neither do I. That's not my law." At another time, he said that their own prophet had prophesied of them, the hypocrites. "In vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men." Everybody's heard the story of him knocking over the money changers' tables. But do you know what they were really doing? They were selling animals for sacrifice. This is the middle of a city, and just like today, metropolitan people don't have a herd of sheep in their backyard. Well, I heard a lot of it was like birds and stuff. But they'd sell people the animals to offer up for their sins. One of the first commandments Yahweh gave Moses before they even crossed over the Red Sea were that all of your firstborn were to be offered up to Yahweh. And should you burn a whole ram on the altar, then it's a pleasing odor to the Lord. Well, Jesus said that sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you prepared for me. So he's obviously talking to the Father. And he did not desire, nor was he pleased with burnt offerings. So when Jesus comes in and sees them using the temple as their piggy bank and making sacrifices that nobody good wants, he gets mad and knocks over their table and starts whipping them. And I mean, I'm sure it was a huge scene. This is why I think Jesus was a real person, because he caused such a scene that they couldn't cover it up and make it just go away. To these temple priests, what good is a God that says, "Love thy neighbor"? They uphold the law. What good is a God that doesn't say, "Go wipe out the next 5 villages to the east"? Yahweh, whatever he may have been, I'm not going to get into that right now, but he had been gone for a long time. Yet these priests are claiming to be doing everything in the name of Yahweh. Now, look, I've listened to a lot of sermons, and I still enjoy a good preacher. But a lot of them can read the same book as me and take away 2 totally different meanings. But I think Jesus is perfectly clear about Moses' law. He says, "I've not come to abolish it. It just can't work like that. It's going to be around till the end of time. But I've come to fulfill it." What happens when you fulfill a contract? That's it. It's done. He's saying this law is done. But I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you certainly will not enter the kingdom of heaven. He's saying, look, your laws are barbaric. I mean, you were going to stone this woman for real? You guys have got to do better than this. And then he goes through the list. You've heard it said that you should not red rum, but I tell you that anybody who's angry with a brother or sister is already on the wrong path. You guys need to stop this stuff before it gets to that stage. You've heard it said, don't commit adultery, but I say that if you're lusting in your heart, then you've already committed it. You got to curb your desires. Nobody's perfect. Oaths. Again, you've heard it said that you can't break your oaths, but you have to fulfill to the Lord the vows that you have made. But I tell you, don't swear an oath at all, either by heaven or the earth. Just a simple yes or no will do. So Yahweh required oaths sealed in blood. And Jesus says, no, you shouldn't even be making oaths. So who did they make this oath with in the Old Testament? So I've heard other people that have figured out that there's a problem here say that it's Satan. And say that, he fallen angel, he wanted to be worshipped as God. And I don't know, it could be. It could be advanced being from before the flood that took to underground caverns, cruises around in UFOs, and is a couple 100,000 years old. I don't know. But I don't think this was Jesus. Like I said at the beginning, Jesus is the Father, is Yahweh. So just so you know, the ancient Hebrews believed that Yahweh was responsible for whatever good and bad came their way. Where Jesus is more the Platonic good, where, all good things come from the Father, which makes it a dualist perspective to where all things then come from an evil one. Anyway, there's several things that I think Yahweh could be, including the Egyptian god Set. So the Pharisees trying to trick Jesus again, it's like this evil Wile E. Coyote, asked this stupid question about, okay, what if a woman's husband dies and she marries the brother, which was custom at the time, and then he dies and blah, blah. And he says that you err because you don't understand the scriptures or the power of God. And in the spirit form, nobody's marrying anybody. You guys just don't understand the reality here. And he says, your God said to you, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. So who is the God of this world? Who is it that gives you wealth and power and all of those great things like Solomon got with his demons? But this shocked the crowd once again. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees and Pharisees, a lawyer decided to question him and said, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And he says, love the Lord God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. Live in a God consciousness. And then the second is love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and all the prophets hang on these two commandments. He's saying, look, if you guys could just do these two things, you wouldn't even need all your stupid laws. Now, when saying love the Lord your God, the word Lord that he's using here is kurios, which means the supreme authority. Now, he knew who all of these people worshipped. He didn't say love Yahweh your God with all your heart. He said love the supreme authority, the master, with all your heart. Anyway, I feel like I've done a very pedestrian job of getting my point across with this because, as always, I've been on this subject for a week and a half now, and you guys are getting to hear like 1% of it. So I did start this playlist. Check it out, especially the Good God channel. He does a great job at going through verse by verse in the Bible and showing the problems. And the more I study into this, the more it all lines up looking this way. But don't take my word on it. Do your own research. I'm really not trying to lead anybody down the wrong path here, but I honestly think I'm trying to help get you on the right path. But if you read the Old Testament and from Exodus on forward, every time it says the Lord, then, the actual word there is Yahweh. Replace that with Jesus and see if anything matches the character of Jesus in the Old Testament. And just remember, it's the universal church of Rome allied with the Pharisees that have told you that the God of the Old Testament is who Jesus was talking about. And just like today with them trying to make out these boogeyman countries that we have to go ballistically liberate, well, the same thing was happening thousands of years ago, saying, oh, well, these guys worship another god, so they've all got to be taken out. Jesus didn't condemn the adulteress, and I don't think he's going to condemn you or I for looking at the evidence and seeing if somebody's tried to pull a fast one on us. At least I hope not. Static out.